expected, and in fact deserved. "Okay," he said again. "Is that a yes?" said Livia, so hopefully that Jed immediately felt terrible for not biting her hand off straight away. But there were rules for this kind of thing, weren't there? Rules of engagement? The main one being both parties had to think getting married was a good thing, or in the absence of that, could vocalize a reason why it wasn't, and quickly. But Jed was too petrified to do anything quickly, too scared of what this would all mean, desperately worried about disappointing her, both now and as her husband. It may not have been a leap year, but it was 2018, so he suspected any objections on the basis of her not being allowed to propose would probably fall on deaf ears. Besides, in true Livia style, everything had been arranged. Any issues anticipated, people invited. How could he possibly say no? He told himself nothing had changed. She was still the same Livia he'd fallen for all those years ago, the same Livia he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, the same Livia who, up until a minute ago, he'd assumed was fine with the way things were. And then, conscious she was still waiting for him to say something, he reached across the table and took her hands in his, though partly to stop his own from shaking. "Yes," he said, as sincerely as he could, and, though Jed loved Livia more than anything, a lot more cheerfully than he felt. Chapter 1. "So Jed didn't have any idea," said Izzy, and Patrick looked up from the article on Barcelona's best museums he'd been about to read to her from the in-flight magazine, then broke into a broad grin. His girlfriend was staring at him, wide-eyed, as if Livia's ruse was the most audacious, ridiculous, and amazing thing she'd ever heard. But he supposed, if you'd only recently turned 22, it just might be. "None whatsoever," he replied. "But what if he turned her down?" "Then we'd be flying to Barcelona for a dirty weekend, instead of their wedding." "Fuck me," said Izzy, a little too loudly for Patrick's liking, given the young family sitting in the row behind them, and he winced. It was her go-to expression for surprise, anger, disappointment. Even after the best part of 3 months together, he still hadn't got used to the way she freely bandied it about, although the amount of times she used the phrase as a request almost made up for that. He rolled his eyes, then, as the fasten seatbelt sign pinged on, indicated she should look out of the window. "And speaking of Barcelona," he said fondly. "What?" "There it is." "Cool," Izzy said. Then she frowned. "It's very regular." "That's the Eixample," he explained, pronouncing it Eixample like a local might. "It's Catalan for extension, one of the earliest examples of town planning. The grid design was intended to—" Patrick stopped talking. Even in the indistinct reflection in the aeroplane window, he could tell Izzy's eyes had glazed over. "You see that big street down the middle?" Izzy stifled a yawn theatrically. "What about it?" "That's where all the shops are." "Oh, right." Suddenly interested, Izzy leaned in closer to the window, letting out a louder still, "Fuck me," when she banged her forehead on the glass, and Patrick had to hide a smile. Already window shopping, even from up here. Though the real thing he knew would come later. He reached across and rubbed a thumb affectionately over the spot where she'd bumped herself, resisting the inclination to offer to kiss it better. Izzy loved shopping. This weekend had already cost him a fair bit, and they hadn't even landed yet. Patrick could almost feel his credit card running through a series of warm-up exercises in his wallet. He was sure the depth of his pockets was one of the reasons Izzy put up with a granddad like him, her description whenever he refused to dance with her or go to concerts to see bands whose members were younger than Anna, his daughter, or eat at restaurants where the music was so loud they had to shout at each other across plates of food, presented as if they were some kind of porcelain catwalk, or eat anything served from the back of a van, or food truck, as Izzy would always correct him, as if that made a difference. But Patrick knew that if you wanted nice things, you had to pay for them, like the vintage...